It was a peaceful day on Earth when the news broke, the news that shook humanity to its core. A child no older than 8 was found dead on a far-off planet, a planet under the control of the Galactic Council. The child was the son of a high-ranking human diplomat, someone who had worked tirelessly for peace across the galaxy. His name was Adam, and his death would ignite a firestorm that would change the fate of humanity forever. The Galactic Council was a powerful organization, an alliance of many different species from across the stars. For centuries, they had made decisions that shaped the galaxy, their influence stretching far and wide. The humans, despite their relatively young place in the cosmos, had been an important part of this council, their diplomats trusted to represent the growing power of Earth. But all of that changed when the child was killed. The Galactic Council's initial reaction was to downplay the incident. The Council claimed it was an unfortunate accident, a misunderstanding. They insisted that Adam's death was not intentional and that it was an act of violence committed by a member of another species. They promised a thorough investigation, but made it clear that it would take time. To many, their words rang hollow. To Adam's parents, it was an excuse. The human diplomats were furious. They demanded accountability, but the council was slow to act. With each passing day, the anger among the human population grew. Protests erupted in cities around Earth, the cries for justice echoing across the planet. Adam's death was not just the loss of one child. It was seen as an attack on humanity itself. People who had trusted the Galactic Council to maintain peace in the galaxy began to question everything they had known. The human leaders met in secret. They gathered in a hidden underground chamber far from the prying eyes of the media and the general public. The room was dimly lit, the air heavy with tension. General Mitchell Clark, a seasoned military officer who had fought in countless battles, stood at the front of the room. His eyes were sharp, focused, as he surveyed the gathered leaders. They were all here to discuss one thing: how to respond to the death of Adam and the Council's refusal to take responsibility. "Ladies and gentlemen," Clark began, his voice low but steady, "we have been patient. We have tried diplomacy, but it is clear now that the Galactic Council does not take us seriously. We have been insulted, our trust betrayed, and now one of our children is dead. We cannot allow this to go unanswered." There was a murmur of agreement among the group. Many of them were veterans of the military or politicians who had served in the highest offices. They all understood the importance of power, of respect, and of not letting others trample on them. But they also understood the importance of peace. They had worked hard to maintain it, and it pained them to see it all unravel. "We cannot afford to show weakness," Clark continued, pacing in front of the group. "If we do nothing, the Galactic Council will see us as insignificant, as weak. They will continue to trample on us, on our children, and on our future. We must show them that humanity will not be silenced. We must show them what happens when you underestimate us." A sharp silence fell over the room. Clark's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The leaders exchanged looks, understanding the gravity of what was being said. The path they were about to take would lead them into uncharted territory. It could be the beginning of a new war, a war that might change the galaxy forever. But it was also their only option. General Clark turned to the console at the front of the room. With a few key presses, a map of Earth's military facilities appeared on the screen. It was a map that few outside the highest ranks of the human military had ever seen. It showed the locations of hidden military assets, secret bases, and long-forgotten weapons. "This," Clark said, pointing to the map, "is what we've been keeping from the rest of the galaxy, our greatest secret. A fleet that has been dormant for centuries, waiting for a time like this. It's time to awaken it." A ripple of shock spread across the room. Some of the leaders leaned forward, others glanced nervously at one another. The fleet Clark referred to was humanity's ancient weapon, a fleet that had been built long before the rise of the Galactic Council. It was a fleet so powerful that it was thought to be a myth, a relic of an ancient war that had long since ended. But now, it was the last hope for humanity's dignity. "You want us to unleash our ancient fleet?" asked President Harper, one of the leaders sitting at the table. Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable hint of concern. "Are we ready for that? This is not just a show of strength, it's a declaration of war." Clark nodded, his face serious. "I know what it means, but we can no longer afford to let the Council see us as weak. We must make them understand that humanity will not be treated like this. We will not stand by and let them take the life of our children." The room was silent once again. No one spoke for several moments, as everyone took in the weight of Clark's words. This was not a decision that could be taken lightly, but as they looked around the room, at the faces of their fellow leaders, they all knew that Clark was right. The time for patience had passed. "Very well," President Harper said finally. "If we are to do this, we will need full support. From every corner of the military, we will need to mobilize the fleet and prepare for a full-scale offensive." Clark smiled grimly. "We've already begun. The fleet is being reactivated as we speak. Our commanders, veterans of Earth's greatest battles, are being brought out of stasis. They will lead this mission. Together, we will show the Galactic Council what happens when you harm one of our own." The decision had been made. The wheels of war were in motion, and nothing would stop them now. As the leaders gathered their things and prepared to leave, Clark stood by the console for a moment longer. He looked down at the map of the ancient fleet, his mind racing. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. There was no turning back. "We will avenge Adam," Clark whispered to himself, his voice filled with a quiet determination. As the days passed, humanity's leaders moved swiftly to execute their plan. The Earth was in turmoil, but it was a focused kind of chaos. Protests were no longer just in the streets, they were in every corner of society. News outlets broadcasted constant coverage of the unfolding crisis, showing images of families, children, and citizens everywhere demanding justice for Adam. In underground chambers hidden far below the surface of Earth, General Mitchell Clark and his trusted commanders continued to oversee the reawakening of the ancient fleet. It was a fleet so old, its origins were lost in the fog of time. Built long before the creation of the Galactic Council, the ships had been left dormant, hidden beneath layers of rock and earth. They were believed to be nothing more than myths, legends told around campfires or in whispered stories. But now, these ancient vessels would be humanity's most powerful weapon. The fleet, codenamed Eagle's Wing, was a creation of Earth's first space explorers, a time when humans had discovered the ability to traverse the stars but lacked the diplomatic finesse they would later gain. It was meant to be a deterrent, a weapon of last resort. Over time, however, as peace became more commonplace and the galaxy grew into a more stable place, the fleet had been placed into storage. Humanity had no need for it, until now. In a remote military complex hidden deep in the mountains, Clark stood before a giant display screen. The image of the fleet's reactivation process was live before him, a sea of stars in the background as the ship slowly began to power up. The once dark ships hidden for centuries now pulsed with the light of life. Their old engines hummed, their systems flickering to life after long years of silence. One by one, the ships awoke. There were over 100 of them, each massive and imposing. They had been built with technology so advanced that it would be incomprehensible to most of the galaxy. Powerful shields that could withstand the harshest forces, weapons that could decimate entire fleets in mere moments, and engines capable of traveling vast distances in the blink of an eye. These ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Clark walked down the long corridor of the facility, past rows of officers and engineers working frantically to bring the fleet online. He could feel the weight of the moment in his chest. This was it, the moment where humanity would prove its worth. The Council would understand that Earth would no longer be a passive participant in the galaxy. The death of one child had awakened something far greater. "General Clark," a voice called from behind him. He turned to see Commander Rebecca Hawthorne, his second in command, approaching. She was a woman of sharp wit and incredible skill, a veteran of countless campaigns. She had been with Clark from the beginning, and she shared his belief that humanity's future rested on this mission. "The fleet is almost ready, sir. The final systems checks are underway." "It won't be long now," she said, her face lit by the glow of the monitors around them. Clark nodded. "Good, but we need to move quickly. We can't afford to give the Council any more time to prepare. The longer we wait, the more damage they'll do to our reputation and to our people." Rebecca nodded in agreement. "We're ready. The commanders of each ship are prepared too. They've been brought out of stasis. They're experienced, battle-tested. They know what's at stake." Clark's eyes softened for a moment, his thoughts drifting to Adam, the young boy who had started it all. The child's death had sparked this mission, but it was more than that. It was about ensuring that humanity was respected, that Earth was no longer seen as a secondary player in the galaxy. It was about making sure that no more innocent lives were lost at the hands of those who thought they could control everything. "We'll make them see," Clark said, his voice firm and resolute. "This is not just about revenge. This is about ensuring that humanity's place in the galaxy is secure, that our children can grow up knowing they are safe." The command center was alive with activity as the final preparations for launch were made. The fleet's commanders, human veterans of Earth's past wars, had been pulled from stasis. They were experts, seasoned in space combat and strategy. Their knowledge of the ancient fleet's systems was invaluable, and they were ready to lead humanity into the next phase of its destiny. Each ship's captain was assigned a specific role in the mission. Captain Eleanor Drake, an experienced military leader with a reputation for being unyielding in battle, would command the flagship of the fleet, the Seraph. It was the largest and most powerful of the ancient ships, capable of leading the charge into enemy territory. Captain Elias Carrington, a battle-hardened veteran known for his swift and precise tactics, would lead the Lionheart, a formidable vessel capable of laying waste to entire fleets with a single strike. General Clark had worked with each of them before, and he trusted them with his life. Together, they would carry out this mission, ensuring that Adam's death would not be in vain. As the hours passed, the fleet began to align itself for launch. The ships moved slowly at first, as their engines began to power up, their shields coming online. The sound of the engines was a low hum, but Clark knew that the power within those ships was nothing short of extraordinary. "We're ready, General," Rebecca said, her voice steady as she stood by Clark's side, looking out at the massive ships on the screen. "The fleet is in position." Clark turned to her, a nod of approval passing between them. "It's time." They moved quickly to the launch bay where the final checks were being made. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Earth's ancient fleet, once thought lost to time, was now humanity's greatest weapon. It was ready to strike. The moment had come to send a message to the galaxy. The Galactic Council would see humanity's power, and they would understand that Earth was no longer a passive bystander. With one single act, Earth would show the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. "Launch," Clark ordered, his voice calm but filled with resolve. The ancient ships moved out of the shadows, breaking free from their long imprisonment. They flew into the sky, their massive forms cutting through the atmosphere with ease. Earth's ancient fleet, the forgotten guardians of humanity's past, were now its most formidable force. The galaxy would soon know that Earth had unleashed its true power. As the ships entered space, Clark watched the stars stretch out before them, knowing that they would not stop until the Galactic Council had paid the price for their actions. There would be no more negotiations, no more waiting for justice. Humanity would take what was owed. The stars stretched out in front of Earth's fleet as it moved through the void of space, each ship powerful and ready for the task ahead. The fleet's commanders were seated at their posts, focused and determined. This was the first real strike against the Galactic Council, and it would set the tone for everything that came after. It was a battle for justice, for humanity's place in the galaxy, and for the future of every person who had lived under the shadow of the Council's power. General Mitchell Clark stood on the command deck of the flagship Seraph, his eyes locked onto the view of the vast expanse of space in front of him. His mind was sharp, his thoughts racing, but there was a quiet calmness about him. He knew the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about revenge for Adam's death. This was a declaration that humanity would no longer sit in the background, ignored by those who thought they could control the galaxy. The Galactic Council would learn that they had made a terrible mistake. The fleet moved swiftly, its massive ships cutting through space with purpose. They were approaching the outer rim of Galactic Council territory, a vast region filled with the Council's military outposts and stations. The fleet's mission was clear: to make the Council realize that the humans of Earth would no longer be disregarded. The Seraph led the way, with the other ships following close behind, ready to act at a moment's notice. "We're entering Council space, General," Commander Rebecca Hawthorne said, her voice steady as she sat at her station beside Clark. She was a woman of few words, but her actions spoke volumes. As Clark's trusted second-in-command, she was the anchor that kept everything grounded, making sure every detail was attended to. "The first target is a military outpost on the edge of Council territory. Our reconnaissance teams say it's lightly guarded." Clark nodded, his gaze never leaving the forward view. "Proceed with caution. We don't know how they'll react yet, but once we make our presence known, there's no turning back." The massive ships moved in unison, as if they were a single entity, a single unstoppable force. The crew on each ship worked in perfect harmony, their eyes trained on their respective consoles. They had all been through military training, some even veterans of Earth's greatest conflicts. But none of them had ever faced an enemy like this before, an enemy that was the most powerful political force in the galaxy. The Seraph dropped out of faster-than-light travel, its engines slowing as it approached the target. It was a massive space station, floating quietly in the cold emptiness. The Council had used it to monitor the surrounding systems, a small but important outpost in the outer reaches of their territory. It wasn't heavily guarded, as it was assumed that nothing would challenge the Council's rule so far from their capital. They had no idea that Earth's fleet was on its way. The fleet's long-range weapons were powered up and ready to fire. Clark's mind raced through the possibilities as he gave the order. "Target the station's communication relay," Clark commanded, his voice calm but firm. "Disable it first. We don't want them sending word to the Council yet." "Understood, sir," Rebecca said, her fingers moving swiftly over her console. The ship's weapon systems came to life, and a pulse of energy surged toward the dear station. Moments later, a loud explosion echoed across the comms. The station's communication systems were disabled, sending a message to the Council that Earth was here, and they were not backing down. Clark stood tall as he observed the damage. The station was now helpless, its communication systems crippled, and the humans had made their first strike. "Now move in and secure the station," Clark ordered. "We need to make sure they understand we're serious." The fleet moved. In closer, its massive ships forming a protective perimeter around the disabled outpost. Boarding teams were sent down to the station, ready to take control of the facility and ensure there was no retaliation. It was a small victory, but it was a necessary one. They were sending a message. Humanity would not be ignored. The troops boarded the station, and as they did, Clark's eyes remained focused on the monitor in front of him. He knew that this would be the first of many steps. The Council might have underestimated humanity's power, but they wouldn't make that. Mistake again. We've secured the station, General, Rebecca said. The relay is still down, but the crew is being detained. No communications are leaving this place. Clark nodded. Good. Now prepare to move out. We need to leave a mark, something that will make the Council sit up and take notice. Fleet shifted once more, moving deeper into Council space. They knew their next step would be even more dangerous. The Galactic Council would undoubtedly send reinforcements to the Outer Rim to deal with the unexpected threat, but Earth was ready. They had the ancient fleet on their side, and no force in the galaxy could stand against it. Back on Earth, the message had already spread. People were watching, waiting for the outcome of the first strike. Earth's leaders, once hesitant to use such a powerful weapon, had now committed to it fully. This was not just about revenge for Adam. It was about proving that humanity had the strength to defend itself, to fight back against those who believed they could control others with impunity. As Earth's fleet pressed forward, the Council was unaware of the storm that was about to break over them. The first strike had been successful, but the real challenge lay ahead. If Earth's fleet could maintain their momentum and take out more critical targets, they would be able to send the Council a message they would never forget. But they couldn't stop there. Every move would need to be calculated, every target carefully selected. One misstep could mean the destruction of the fleet, the loss of everything they had worked for. And General Clark knew that the Galactic Council would retaliate with everything they had. The next steps would be even more dangerous, but Earth had no choice now. The war had begun, and there was no turning back. On the Seraph, Clark turned to Rebecca, his eyes cold with resolve. We've made our first move. Now we make sure they understand that Earth is not just a player in this galaxy. We are a force to be reckoned with. Rebecca nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. The Council will never see us coming. The news of Earth's fleet's actions spread quickly through the Galactic Council's vast communication network. Within hours, the quiet, peaceful space that had once been under the protection of the Council was now teeming with activity. The Council was in a state of chaos. The first strike against their outer station, the attack that had disabled their communication relay, was just the beginning. Earth's fleet had made its presence known, and the consequences were beginning to unfold. In the Council's main chamber, a large room filled with representatives from countless different species, a tense silence had fallen. The leaders of the Galactic Council, sitting in a circle around a giant holographic table, watched the events unfold in real time. There was no denying it now. Humanity was serious, and they had awakened something that had been lying dormant for centuries. A dangerous, forgotten power. I told you this would happen, said Prime Minister Colne, an alien with dark green skin and multiple eyes that swiveled in all directions. His voice was low but firm, filled with frustration. We have ignored the humans for too long. Now they've shown us what they are capable of. At the far end of the room, the leader of the military branch, General Rock, a hulking figure, with a rough demeanor, grunted in agreement. The Earth fleet has already taken one of our stations. They've proven that they can fight back. If we do not respond quickly, we risk losing more. Counselor Jiven, a sleek, silver-skinned diplomat, raised his hand, signaling for quiet. We must remain calm. We cannot let our fear guide us. This is a miscalculation on their part. We can still regain control. But others were not so sure. Counselor Tessa, a sharp-eyed alien from the outer reaches of the galaxy, spoke up with an air of concern. Their fleet isn't some random collection of ships. The power they possess is something we have not seen before. I've heard rumors of ancient weapons from Earth's past, but I never believed them. If they truly have that kind of force, we are in serious danger. The room shifted uneasily. The threat was real, and many of the counselors now realized that they had underestimated the humans. For too long, they had treated Earth as a minor player, assuming that their growing military power was nothing more than a small threat compared to the larger, more established species in the galaxy. Now, they knew how wrong they were. "We cannot wait any longer," Rock said, his voice growing louder. "We must act now. Send our fleet to the outer rim and deal with the humans. We cannot allow them to continue their assault on our stations. They will learn the hard way that the Council does not tolerate insubordination." Colne hesitated, his eyes narrowing in thought. "And what of the fleet Earth has awakened? We do not know the full extent of its capabilities. If we send our forces without understanding the strength of their ships, we may walk right into a trap." "I agree," Jivan said cautiously. "We need more information before we strike. If they truly have a fleet like no other, we need to analyze their tactics and determine how best to counter them. We cannot afford to rush into this blindly." The council members argued back and forth, each one presenting different views and possible strategies. Some wanted to act immediately, sending the full might of the council's fleet to crush the humans. Others, however, urged patience, fearing that attacking without knowing the full strength of Earth's forces would lead to disastrous consequences. After hours of heated debate, the council reached a decision. A small task force, a powerful yet manageable fleet, would be dispatched to confront Earth's forces. The goal was to gather more intelligence on the human fleet, test its strength, and see if the Earth ships could be beaten. If the situation proved more serious than anticipated, the Council would deploy its full fleet to neutralize the threat once and for all. General Rock was chosen to lead the operation. His reputation as a fierce and experienced military strategist made him the perfect candidate for the job. He would not let the humans slip through their grasp. As the task force prepared for departure, Rock gathered his crew for a final briefing. Standing in front of a giant holographic map of the galaxy, he addressed his officers with authority. "We are dealing with an unpredictable enemy. The humans have already shown that they are not afraid to fight back. Our mission is to gather information, not to engage unless absolutely necessary. But be warned, if they resist, we will show them that the Galactic Council's might is unmatched." The officers nodded, their faces hardened with resolve. They had all heard of Earth's new fleet, the legendary ships that were said to have the power to change the course of the galaxy. But none of them had seen them firsthand. They were about to face an unknown enemy, and they knew that their response would shape the future of the galaxy. Rock's fleet, composed of advanced ships from various council member species, departed. From the council's central command, their engines burning bright as they sped toward the outer rim of council space. The task force consisted of warships equipped with cutting-edge weapons, as well as reconnaissance vessels to gather vital intelligence. Rock's strategy was clear: find out just how strong Earth's fleet really was and determine the best way to neutralize the threat. The journey to the outer rim took several days, and during that time, Earth's fleet continued to make its way deeper into council space, leaving a trail of destroyed communication relays and military outposts. The council had not yet made any significant moves against the humans, but it was only a matter of time before they would have to face off. As Rock's fleet approached the outer rim, they received their first glimpse of Earth's power. They encountered a small fleet of Earth's ships, a powerful but smaller group than the one that had attacked the station. Despite their relatively smaller size, the humans were prepared for battle. The Earth ships moved in tight formations, their weapons primed and shields up. "We've located the humans," one of Rock's officers reported. "They're waiting for us. They know we're coming." Rock's eyes gleamed with determination. It's time to show them the power of the Galactic Council. But as his fleet moved closer, Rock couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The humans were quiet, their ships seemingly calm and unassuming. But there was something about their presence that made Rock uneasy. He knew better than to trust appearances. As they closed the distance, the humans made their first move. Without warning, they unleashed a barrage of weapons so powerful that it shook Rock's fleet to its core. The humans had been holding back. Now, they were unleashing the full might of their ancient fleet. The shock wave from the attack reverberated across the vast emptiness of space, and Rock's ships scrambled to react. "They've got more firepower than we expected," Rock growled, watching as one of his ships took heavy damage. "Activate! Shields! Return fire!" But it was too late. The humans had already moved in closer, their ships maneuvering with an agility that stunned the Council's forces. The battle had begun. The Galactic Council's response was swift, but it was clear that Earth's fleet was not like any other. The humans had awakened something far greater than anyone had anticipated. The battle between Earth's fleet and the Galactic Council's forces raged on, filling the void of space with flashes of light and explosions. It was a clash of powers, old and new, a struggle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. 4. The first time in history, the Galactic Council had underestimated humanity. The humans of Earth had awakened an ancient power, a fleet so powerful that it was shaking the very foundation of the Council's rule. General Mitchell Clark stood on the bridge of the Seraph, watching the unfolding chaos. His eyes were steady, his focus unwavering, but the weight of the battle was heavy on his shoulders. This was no longer just a matter of justice for Adam, the child who had been senselessly killed. It was now a fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. They had made their stand, and there was no turning back. Beside Clark, Commander Rebecca Hawthorne monitored the battle from her station. The sounds of alarms and reports filled the room as the ships exchanged fire. "General, our fleet is holding strong, but the Council is deploying more reinforcements. We need to push forward if we're going to win this." Clark nodded grimly. "We will push forward. We've come too far to back down now, but we need to be careful. One wrong move, and we could lose everything." Rebecca's face tightened, with resolve. "Understood, sir. I'll make sure our ships stay coordinated." As the fleet advanced deeper into Council space, the battle intensified. The Council's reinforcements arrived, massive warships, their engines glowing brightly as they entered the fray. But Earth's ancient fleet was not intimidated. The humans had learned long ago how to fight as a united force, and they now moved with precision and purpose, tearing through the Council's ranks. In the heat of battle, the Seraph moved toward the Council's flagship, a massive vessel called the Tempest. It was the heart of the Council's military strength, and it was heavily protected. Clark knew that if they could destroy the Tempest, it would cripple the Council's ability to fight back. "Prepare the weapons," Clark commanded. "We need to take down their flagship." Rebecca gave a nod, her fingers flying across the controls. "Weapons are primed and ready, General. We can fire when you give the word." Clark took a deep breath. The Tempest was well protected, surrounded by a fleet of smaller warships. The humans' weapons were powerful, but they had to be careful not to waste their firepower. One shot could make all the difference. "Fire," Clark ordered. The Seraphs. Guns unleashed a barrage of energy, their beams cutting through space toward the Tempest. The first few shots missed, but then the next wave struck true. The Council flagship's shields flickered under the assault, sparks flying from its surface as the energy beams slammed into its hull. The Tempest's weapons returned fire, but Earth's fleet was agile, moving quickly to avoid the blasts. "Direct hit on their port side," Rebecca reported. "Their shields are down. We've got a clear shot." Clark didn't hesitate. "Take it!" Another series of shots rang out, this time landing squarely on the Tempest's exposed side. The explosion rocked the massive ship, sending shock waves through space. The Tempest shuddered and began to list, its systems failing under the relentless barrage. The Council flagship was not yet destroyed, but it was no longer a threat. Earth's fleet had dealt a decisive blow, and the Council knew it. The tide of the battle had turned. "We've done it, General," Rebecca said, her voice filled with quiet triumph. "The Tempest is disabled. They won't be able to fight, back much longer. Clark stood tall, his heart pounding in his chest. The victory was bittersweet. There was still much to do, but for the first time since the beginning of the conflict, Clark allowed himself to feel the weight of what they had accomplished. Earth's fleet had shown the Council what it was capable of. They had proven that humanity was not to be underestimated, but the battle was far from over. As the Tempest limped away, the Council's remaining fleet began to regroup. They were not ready to give up, and Earth's fleet had to press forward, making sure that the Council's resistance was completely crushed. "General," Rebecca said, her eyes scanning the battlefield, "the Council is pulling back. They're forming a new line of defense around their homeworld. They're trying to make a stand." Clark's eyes narrowed. "We finish it here. If they retreat to their homeworld, we'll have to chase them down, and that will cost us too. Many resources. We need to strike now." He turned to his fleet commanders, each of them watching the battle unfold on their own screens. "This is it," Clark said. "We push forward and show the galaxy what happens when you mess with Earth. No mercy." The fleet surged forward, its weapons at the ready. The remaining Council ships formed a defensive line around their capital, the heart of their empire. But it was clear that they were no longer fighting for victory. They were fighting for survival. As Earth's fleet closed in, Clark felt the weight of the moment. This was not just about revenge or justice for Adam. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Earth was not weak. Humanity was not some small, insignificant species to be overlooked. They were a force to be reckoned with. The final battle loomed ahead, the final judgment of the Galactic Council's reign. Earth's fleet moved in, its weapons charging, and Clark knew that this would be the moment that defined humanity's future. "Ready all weapons," Clark commanded, his voice steady. "We end this now." The final attack came swiftly. Earth's fleet launched a devastating barrage of energy beams, tearing through the remaining Council ships. The Council's defenses faltered under the onslaught, their once mighty ships falling one by one. It was over. The Galactic Council, once the most powerful political entity in the galaxy, had been defeated by the humans they had once ignored. Earth's ancient fleet had proven its worth, and humanity had made its mark on the stars. As the last of the Council's ships were destroyed, Clark watched the battlefield. The vast emptiness of space was now filled with the debris of a once powerful empire. The message had been sent. Humanity would no longer be treated as insignificant. Clark turned to Rebecca, his eyes filled with quiet satisfaction. "We've done it," he said. "The galaxy will never forget what happened here." And in that moment, Clark knew that Earth had claimed its place in the galaxy. It was no longer a species to be ignored or underestimated. Humanity had proven its strength, and the Galactic Council would never make the same mistake again.